Hi, my name is Laura Hope-Gill, and I am a creator of a project called The Story Shepherds. I am very moved to be developing this idea, which I don't think it really belongs to anybody. I believe we are all people with stories within us. We are part of each other's stories in often surprising ways. When we begin to tell and share, we often find out we have more in common than we have as difference. Our stories are our experiences, things that we've seen, people that have come into our lives, hopefully wonderful people who've come through them, and sometimes not so wonderful people. Our stories are wonderful meals that we've enjoyed, fantastic places where we've slept, very horrible places where we've slept, and horrible meals that we've eaten. Stories can entail our darkest time of life. They can also entail our moments of great pleasure and delight and joy, but they all weave together. We find when we start telling our stories that another one pops up while we're telling one, and another one sort of popcorns up, and we try to stay on track, but we find that our stories don't like to be told that way, right? We're going to say, well, here's a digression for you. We say things like that because when we start telling our stories, envision it as grabbing hold of a little tiny thread that's sticking out of a sweater or something, and you start to pull it and you think that it's just going to be a little bit. But if you keep pulling, you start to not just realize that the one thread that you've pulled out actually turns into arms and a neck hole and a whole beautiful sweater, but it might actually be a part of many sweaters. And then you start telling your story across these many moments of your life, and by the time you're finished talking, you wonder, wow, where did all that come from? Was all that inside me? And it feels good. It might feel a little bit vulnerable. It might feel that people have to say sorry for taking up your time, right? At least we apologize for our stories being wild and woolly. Where did that come from, right? When did we start being unsure that our stories hold value? Worse, that our stories are a waste of somebody else's time if they listen to them? Where does this idea of my story doesn't matter? Like, oh, you've heard bigger stories than this, or my story's not that important, right? I don't have anything really exciting to tell. We have devalued our own stories. I don't know what we're supposed to talk about, but we're not supposed to tell our stories in so many settings. Like, we go into our jobs and we do what we're supposed to do. We come home, and what do? We turn on somebody else's story, right? We start streaming our shows, which I have nothing against that. I am deep into South Korean cinema right now. But anyway, we sort of shove them away. Maybe we have weekly therapy appointments or monthly, and in therapy we tell about what's been going on in our lives and what we're thinking about. Often that conversation is still sort of not quite being a simple storytelling session, right? Because we go in and we want to understand what's wrong with us. We want to understand why we're angry all the time, why we're tired all the time. So we start to look at our stories as symptoms of maybe things that we've done wrong. Maybe we look at our stories as things we're supposed to grow out of. So the Story Shepherds is going to place story right back in the center of our lives, which is the same thing as setting what we know, what we feel, what we care about, right in the center of our lives. We're not alone there when we're centering story, because story also occurs between people. We tell our stories first. We're actually listening often to a part of us that we haven't been hearing. If I tell a story about something that happened when I was 17, that 17-year-old is inside me telling the story, so that the 54-year-old in me can hear it and kind of be surprised each time I tell it that, oh, I didn't realize that was connected or something. But we start to learn about ourselves when we start telling. A story also occurs between the teller and the listener. So even though we're saying we're placing our stories in the center of our lives, we're centering storytelling at the center of our communities. Now we have so many stories available to us through TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of this, and Netflix, of course, all the streaming devices. We sort of mechanized our need for story, providing lots of different ways to get it. But one way that really, really matters is the stories that we tell our friends and the stories that we share when we're healing. We have a small group of people perhaps that we do tell our stories to, or maybe we don't. Maybe we feel when we tell our stories we have to unload on somebody, and it's rather than see it as a blessing of building community, we see it as a burden. I'm not sure where our humanity is supposed to fit in this very, very mechanistic world. And this is in part why we need the story shepherds.